Bankers seek legal cover after backing $1.5 trillion of ESG debt. Yes, things are going bad for them, but oddly enough, it's not in the way we might think. So don't start celebrating too soon. Bankers servicing one of the world's biggest ESG debt markets are now actively seeking legal protections to guard against potential greenwashing allegations that may be ahead. What is greenwashing? What are they being accused of? Well, stay tuned. In the handful of years they've existed, sustainability linked loans have mushroomed into a $1.5 trillion market. SLLs let borrowers and lenders say that a loan is tied to some environmental or social metric, but the documentation to back those claims generally isn't available to the public, nor is the market regulated. What are you saying? Are you saying that you've been selling these activists like regular loans and then trying to pass them off as ESG loans? Which, by the way, if they did that, they'd be doing their customers a favor, because at least the non-ESG stuff has a hope of making a profit. Yeah, that's kind of where I think they're going with this. Lawyers advising SLL bankers say that the reputational risks associated with mislabeling such products are now too big to ignore. So they've been mislabeling such products. Okay. Yeah, so even though ESG is collapsing all around us, there are still pockets in these industries that are sticking to ESG and even actively talking about, mislabeling this ESG stuff might get you in trouble, which I find funny because I would actually prefer to not have the ESG stuff. But then again, I wouldn't be out there actively looking for ESG loans. Greg Brown, a London-based partner in Allen and Overy's banking practice, says he's seen a surge in clients asking for new legal clauses in SLL documentation. Such add-ons are designed to let lenders strip sustainability element from a loan. So-called declassification provisions mean bankers can just book what had been in SLL as a normal loan. And should they subsequently realize the product doesn't actually merit an environmental, social, or governance label. Dude, this is getting even sneakier, huh? They're going to try to sneak ESG shit to you by labeling it as non-ESG now. Ooh, you can read that so many ways. Rachel Richardson, head of ESG at London-based law firm McFarlane's, head of ESG, said her firm's clients are now asking for more and more declassification clauses. I would describe it as protection for lenders against the greenwashing risk, she said in an interview. The newness of such clauses means it's not yet clear how often clients will end up triggering them, but their introduction is an important signal. Signal for what? That more and more people don't want it known that they invest in ESG because their investors are going to be like, no, we like making money. Jamie McPherson, senior counsel at McFarlane's, pointed to a letter by the Erstep One's Financial Conduct Authority in June addressed to heads of sustainable finance. The FCA noted that it does not directly regulate this part of the market and said that the concerns around integrity of some SLLs have been corroborated by market intelligence. As a result, accusations of greenwashing may follow. So they're being warned, yeah. For SLL bankers, that means publicizing anything you can't back up with good, robust process is in danger from a regulatory perspective. All right, this makes sense. Like, so you promised us, that this loan meets these ESG standards. Where's the proof that it actually does? Well, the client said it does. Oh, that's not good enough. You're actually gonna have to provide evidence. Man, how long do you think this ESG virtue signaling is gonna last when these companies have to actually provide evidence? Because this is getting funny. Now, the SLL market is far from transparent. Not all deals can be seen in public filings. According to data compiled by Bloomberg NEF, sustainability-linked loans arranged in the first 3 quarters of current year amounted to only 40% of the level seen the same time last year, roughly 136 billion. Yeah, that's because ESG is collapsing. It loses money, and these the market is so bad right now These activist investors are losing money on their other investments whose profits they would be using to fund ESG. It's dead. It's over. Next year, meanwhile, a large number of SLL borrowers will need to get existing loans rolled over. An estimated 187 billion worth of SLLs come due in current year, plus one, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. More than 90% of that will be in the form of revolving credit facilities. The most active SLL lenders are Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase, according to a leaked data compiled by Bloomberg. Representatives from both banks declined to comment. So pretty much if you got money in these banks, you better be ready to perform a run on the bank at a moment's notice, because they're just throwing that money away. The real downside risk for lenders is if you take your SLL book and you publicize to the world or to your regulator that you are now financing X trillion dollars of sustainable finance. What happens if someone takes a ruler to that and actually delves down into what that means? Lenders may not be as supportive of the sustainability-linked loan market in current year plus one as they were during its peak in current year -2 to -1 period, according to at least 3 senior bankers who have worked on SLLs. That's a surprise, actually. It only took them 2 years to realize that this shit loses money, huh? According to at least 3 who asked not to be named, discussing non-public information. Anonymous sources. Aside from an overall retreat from debt markets due to higher interest rates, one banker pointed out to an additional level of souring towards the SLL market that's been driven by the arrival of regulatory scrutiny. Are you telling me that this ESG stuff has always just been a scam and they were doing it to get around regulators? Oh, man, I would love to see the kind of shady stuff that's been going on with all this ESG money. I hope they get investigated hard. Voluntary standard setters in the industry also are trying to catch up, which means there'll probably be stricter guidelines in the future. The Allen and Overy's Brown said banks were increasingly seeking additional legal protections for SLLs at the end of last year. But this year, such clauses were starting to appear almost as standard in a lot of deals. So regulatory scrutiny feeds into lenders taking a closer look at their ESG-related products, he said. Anything that has an ESG label, we need to be a bit more careful. Now that it comes with extra work, they're not going to want to do it. Yeah, because now I actually like this. They're being held accountable. Like, oh, you only invest in ESG companies? Well, prove it. Show us your ledgers. Show us your books. Prove that you're doing what you claim. The declassification clauses now being attached to SLLs can come in a variety of forms. McFarland's Richardson said triggers may be set off should borrowers and lenders fail to agree on new ESG targets. If those originally attached to a loan become irrelevant, in some cases, the bank may decide that borrowers facing ESG material adverse change. Oh, really? Like actually needing to make money all of a sudden? Like, fuck, investor money ran out and we have to appeal to our customers again. Well, guess this ESG shit's going on the back burner. So once a declassification clause has been triggered, banks will typically demand that borrowers stop referring to the deal as sustainability linked. In some cases, borrowers may even be required to delete any historical references to declassified SLL. But that may be impossible if borrowers have previously listed their SLLs in public documents such as financial statements. It's something lawyers have been watching particularly closely from the borrower's side, he said. Breaching that publicity clause that goes with a declassification provision is likely going to lead to the event of a default. So that's one place where there's an actual bite in the context of the loan agreement, as most sustainability provisions don't risk default that could knock over financing. Who's going to want to participate in this? Although I guess desperate enough companies would. After a timid start in current year -6, the SLL market took off as banks increasingly attached sustainability claims to loans, often without having to provide public documentation to back the label. Until now. Oh, God, what if they retroactively had to provide that? Between current year -5 and current year -2, the SLL market soared more than 960% to 516 billion of annual deals, according to data provided by Bloomberg NEF. Green bonds, the biggest ESG market, grew 250% the same period, just over 640 billion of annual deals. As of last year, there was no ESG debt market bigger than SLLs except for green bonds. It's still all a scam. Just don't get your money involved in any of this if you want to keep it. So SL bankers Bloomberg spoke with raised concerns that some of the deals crossing their desks had questionable sustainability credentials. Some of the deals were rejected, but others were accepted for commercial reasons. We need money to pay our bills. Those reasons? So they cited examples in which borrowers set themselves softer emission reductions targets than their current net zero trajectory implied. Oh, God. The scam is all just falling apart, isn't it? Now, so they've been making all these wild promises, like, oh, we're going to be net zero by 2025. Now that their funding is tied to them proving it. All right. You said you were going to be net zero by in 2 years. Well, what's your status right now? What are you doing to make that possible? Oh, this is good. Yeah, borrowers would allow themselves several years to meet such goals. Yeah, and they're kind of hoping that, like, the reason that all these like net zero targets keep being moved out is they're stalling for time. I think a lot of these companies know that this shit's going out. That soon all this ESG stuff will be forgotten and frowned upon. So they're, if they set their goals too soon, they'll be expected to actually provide evidence that they're working on them, and because the deadline's coming up. So they always just set like nebulous deadlines, like, we'll be carbon neutral sometime in 2060. And then they just stall for time. They're like, I don't see this shit lasting for another few more years. Maybe by 2027, we can just scrub this from our records and pretend we never said it. Like that's what I see happening. Examples given by the bankers include rejecting SLL pitches with health and safety targets, as these are often a little more than a promise to uphold the absolute minimum requirements needed to avoid work-related injuries. God, so many companies have been gaming the system just to scam these ESG investors. I mean, I don't blame them for it. I'd have no sympathy for ESG investors or lenders, so whatever. Another example, a coal company was seeking SSO wanted environment targets to cover just 5% of its emissions. The loan was rejected by Western banks, but ultimately taken up by lenders in the company's local market who were joined by Chinese banks. This, I think, is going to ultimately bite them in the ass, because while Western banks have been, purposely avoiding certain industries entirely, China has been more than happy to step up. Like, we'll lend you the money. Another banker spoke of deals in which key performance indicators were set to sustainability targets that never presented realistic ESG risk in the first place. Airstrip One's FCA had itself document examples of potential greenwashing in its June letter to sustainable finance heads. It noted that 250 SLL transactions done by one market participant in current year minus one, only 30% were deemed fit for purpose. How long until we start outing mass amounts of these green pushers as hypocrites that have just been abusing the label? Can't wait. The FCA also said that it noted a general sentiment among banks that the relationship may matter more than the borrower's sustainability credentials. So, yeah, we like you. We're going to give you a better deal. Okay. The Grace Osborne, an analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, described the SL market as opaque, which makes measuring the impact of a substantial change. Goddamn. That was just me tripping up there. As a result, a growing concern that the products are being used as marketing tools for banks, also a means to achieve sustainable related finance targets, may create regulatory reputational risk. Now, ultimately, you know what I think will be the funniest outcome of all of this? If they've been using this ESG shit as marketing tactics, as marketing tools, like the article just said, what if they actually end up losing customers as the pendulum swings and no one wants anything to do with ESG anymore? And on top of that, they also get into legal trouble for lying about it all these years. Oh, they'd be double fucking themselves. Like this is sitting on a double-sided dildo, and getting it fully rammed up there. Like that's impressive. That's what these guys are doing to themselves. And I'm going to be laughing all the way if that happens, man. The smaller but more transparent sustainability-linked bond market, the International Capital Market Association, has set guidelines to protect investors from greenwashing that specifically require issuers to set key performance indicators that are relevant to their industry. I wonder what those would be, though. This year, the Loan Market Association published updated voluntary principles for SLLs. Borrowers and their banks are supposed to make sure that the key performance indicators are actually relevant, core, and material. KPIs should also be measurable or quantifiable and and possible to compare with a benchmark. All of this shit is so bad, by the way. Like, man, I've seen this happen across multiple jobs as the company is well, the various companies I've worked for were trolling for investors. God, they kept bugging me for more and more shit, and then creating processes just to meet legal guidelines in case investors asked for them. Like, oh man, it gets so annoying. But I understand their purpose at least. Borrowers are encouraged to publicly report the extent to which they're meeting targets. No, instead of encouraging them, they should be required to. How about that? Crucially, external verification is required according to the LMA's updated principles, which only apply to deals struck after March 9th of this year. So everyone else, you don't have to verify it, I guess. You're safe. SLs have seen a meteoric growth since their inception in current year -6. Well, they're not going to be growing for long. Like, that whole market is kind of crashing now. And as such, the market practice is in a constant state of evolution. The LMA said in May, much like the SLL product itself is intended, it is intended that these model provisions shall evolve in line with the market. With its or in its June letter, the FCA said the SLL market provides a useful transition finance tool. If done right, the regulator added that it now hopes to encourage industry-led action that will help the market for SLL scale with integrity. I think it will, but it's going to scale downwards because investors don't really have the money to be throwing away on activism right now. This is not going to be sustainable for very long. I'm fine with it, though. Let them keep, wrapping themselves into knots, regulating themselves, putting themselves out of business soon enough. I can't wait to cover those stories.